The engagement party was buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music, all perfectly arranged to celebrate Emma and David's future. But Emma felt strangely detached as she moved through the crowd, her smile polite but her mind elsewhere, replaying memories she hadn't thought of in years, memories that Liam, her first love, had once made vivid and unshakable, and now, seeing him standing quietly near the entrance, she froze for a moment, her heart skipping in disbelief, wondering if it was real or if her eyes were playing tricks, because there he was, taller than she remembered, calm yet intense, scanning the room before his eyes landed on her, and in that instant, everything around her, the laughter, the chatter, the soft glow of the decorations, seemed to fade as time slowed and she felt an old, familiar pull, a mixture of nostalgia and something deeper, something she hadn't expected to feel again, a magnetic tension that made her stomach tighten and her pulse race, and despite knowing the right thing was to turn away, to walk back to David who was across the hall, animatedly joking with his friends, she found herself moving toward Liam almost without thinking, drawn by a force that was equal parts danger and desire, and as she approached, her mind battled between reason and longing, questioning why he was here, why he had come, whether fate had placed him in this exact spot or if it was simply coincidence, and Liam's voice, soft yet charged, said her name. Like it had been waiting years to be spoken again, and she felt a shiver run down her spine as he smiled, awkward but sincere, and in that moment, the crowd around them became irrelevant, their engagement celebration a distant hum compared to the silent conversation their eyes began, heavy with unspoken words, regrets, apologies, and memories of nights spent laughing and dreaming together, memories that now felt bittersweet and fragile, like delicate glass that could shatter with the slightest touch, and they began to talk, hesitant at first, about small things, work, life updates, nothing threatening, but even in these mundane exchanges, Emma felt the past bleeding through, the way he remembered things about her that David could never know, the way he asked questions that dug beneath the surface, gently probing the parts of her that had always felt alive with him, and she laughed softly at a shared joke. A laugh that sounded strange even to her own ears, lighter and more honest than the laughter she had forced while greeting other guests, and as they talked, the music and the chatter of the party became background noise, the decorations blurred into a soft haze, and Emma realized she was standing in a private bubble with Liam, a bubble that felt both comforting and dangerous, comforting because it reminded her of who she used to be, dangerous because it reminded her of what she had promised to David, and yet despite the warnings in her mind, she couldn't stop the surge of emotion that welled up inside, a mix of longing, guilt, and an undeniable spark that neither of them could pretend wasn't there, and she found herself sharing a small smile, a flicker of connection that felt forbidden, and Liam mirrored it, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips, and for a moment, Emma wondered if this was fate giving her a glimpse of something she had lost, something that had been buried under years of life moving on, responsibilities, and the love she thought she had chosen, and as the party continued around them, Emma felt the pull stronger, a silent current drawing her closer to him, until she realized she was stepping a little too close, her arm brushing his accidentally, and the spark that ran through her at that touch made her heart stutter, a warning bell she couldn't ignore, but also a thrill she couldn't deny, and she saw in Liam's eyes the same flicker of recognition, the same mixture of hesitation and longing, a mirrored reflection of her own heart that made everything else fade further, and in that quiet, suspended moment, she knew that this encounter, no matter how brief or seemingly innocent, was about to stir emotions she hadn't been prepared for, a quiet storm ready to disrupt the calm surface of her life, and as they lingered there, exchanging small words and glances heavy with meaning, Emma felt her pulse quicken, realizing that seeing Liam again was like opening a door to a part of herself she thought had been locked away, and with every heartbeat, she became more aware of the dangerous, intoxicating possibility of what could happen if she let herself linger too long in this private moment, and yet, even with all the warning signs flashing inside her mind, she stayed, caught between what was safe and what was irresistible, unsure of where this moment would lead but acutely aware that her heart had already started the journey, and in the swirl of laughter, music, and celebration around them, Emma and Liam existed in their own fragile world, where time slowed, and the past whispered insistently, reminding her that some connections never truly fade, and that even the most carefully planned future could be threatened by a single look, a single word, a single unexpected return. After their initial awkward reunion, Emma and Liam found themselves drifting toward a quiet corner behind the venue, away from the bright lights and jubilant chatter of the engagement party, the hum of laughter and clinking glasses fading into a distant background, leaving them in a bubble of hushed intimacy that felt almost forbidden, and the air between them was thick with unspoken words, memories, and attention neither had expected to feel again, a mix of excitement and unease that made every glance and gesture feel amplified, every slight touch sending an unexpected jolt through their hearts. And as Liam spoke softly about the life he had built since they last saw each other, Emma felt herself listening intently, noticing the small changes in his voice, the way he held himself, the lines of experience etched gently into his features, all reminding her that time had passed, yet something essential about him remained untouched, a magnetic pull she couldn't deny, and she realized with a pang that she had missed this connection more than she had thought, that part of her had been waiting for him without knowing it, while the rational part of her screamed that she shouldn't feel this way, that she had made commitments, that she had promised a future with David, yet the emotions she felt in Liam's presence were immediate, visceral, impossible to ignore, and as they began talking about more personal things, memories of long walks, quiet conversations late at night, dreams they had shared in their youth, the laughter between them grew softer but more genuine, a quiet warmth that reminded Emma of simpler times when love had been new, untainted, full of possibility, and she noticed that Liam's eyes held a similar reflection of longing, a quiet ache of what was lost and what might never be again, and in that shadowed corner, their conversation took on a rhythm that felt familiar and comforting, a back and forth that flowed effortlessly, where words were punctuated by glances and gentle smiles, and though neither mentioned David or the engagement explicitly, the weight of reality hung over them like a thin veil, a constant reminder that their connection was dangerous, that one wrong move could unravel more than just the evening, and yet, despite this awareness, they couldn't help but inch closer emotionally, letting themselves remember the past, the laughter, the shared secrets, the late-night talks, and all the moments that had shaped their youth together, while also confronting the undeniable truth that those moments were never truly gone, that the bond they had shared still existed beneath the surface, strong enough to make the present feel electric. And as Liam reached for her hand in a brief, tentative gesture, Emma felt a surge of conflicting emotions, joy, longing, guilt, and fear, all interwoven into a single, breathtaking moment, and she realized that this connection, this closeness, was more intense than anything she had experienced in years, more vivid than she had allowed herself to feel with anyone since him, and as they laughed softly at a shared memory, their eyes locked, the world around them shrinking until only the two of them existed, a private universe of emotion, of possibility, of what could have been, and in that universe, Emma felt her heart open, remembering the comfort, the thrill, and the passion that had once defined her life with Liam, feeling simultaneously exhilarated and terrified at the power of these old, unhealed feelings, and as they spoke of things they had never confessed, regrets, unspoken dreams, and fleeting what-ifs, the air between them seemed to thrum with energy, a mixture of nostalgia and a longing that neither could fully articulate, and even as Emma caught herself glancing back toward the main hall, where David laughed unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes, she felt drawn deeper into this secret world with Liam, unable to resist the magnetic pull of familiarity and desire, while he mirrored her hesitation and yearning in every quiet glance, every subtle smile, every careful word, and in a moment that felt suspended in time, their laughter faded into a thoughtful silence, both of them aware that what they were feeling could not remain hidden for long, that a single misstep could shatter the delicate balance between the life Emma had chosen and the life that had once been hers with Liam. Yet neither could stop the current that had begun to flow between them, a gentle but undeniable tide of emotion, and as Liam leaned slightly closer, his voice low and almost reverent, saying things that were simple yet heavy with meaning, Emma felt her pulse quicken, realizing that in this quiet corner behind the venue, in these stolen minutes away from the party, she was facing a part of herself she had long tried to bury, a part that still belonged to Liam, a part that yearned for the comfort and connection of the past, and even though she knew the danger of these feelings, even though her rational mind screamed that she should step back, she couldn't, because the pull was too strong, because the emotions they shared were too raw and real to ignore, and as they sat together in that shadowed space, time stretching in a way that made every second feel infinite, Emma felt both exhilarated and terrified, understanding that this private, whispered connection might change everything, that a single choice in these fleeting moments could ripple into her future, and yet she found herself lingering, savoring every look, every word, every heartbeat, knowing that these moments were precious, that the nostalgia and desire that danced between them were fragile and fleeting, and that the night ahead held choices she couldn't yet see, decisions that would test her heart, her loyalty, and the depth of her longing. And as the distant music from the party continued, soft and persistent, Emma and Liam existed in a delicate bubble of emotion, a mixture of remembrance, attraction, and the bittersweet realization that some connections, once reignited, refused to fade quietly, and that what had started as a casual encounter had already begun to stir a storm neither of them could easily calm, leaving them both suspended in the thrilling and terrifying uncertainty of what this private moment could lead to, and in that quiet corner behind the lights and laughter of the engagement party, Emma felt her heart tugged in directions she had not planned, directions she both feared and craved, a dance of emotion that promised to reshape everything she thought she knew about love, longing, and the fragile line between the past and the life she had promised to build with David. The quiet corner behind the venue that had seemed safe and intimate moments before now felt charged with electricity, a fragile tension that neither Emma nor Liam could ignore. And as they lingered there, speaking softly, the world around them, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the music, faded further into a distant hum, leaving only the pull of each other, a magnetic connection that had never really left and now seemed impossible to resist. And with every word Liam whispered, every subtle smile that crossed his face, Emma felt her heart race, a mixture of longing, guilt, and thrill that left her both exhilarated and terrified, because she knew she was crossing boundaries she shouldn't, stepping into territory that could unravel the life she had promised to David. Yet in the moment, all rational thought was swept aside by the flood of emotions that surged between them, emotions that were raw, unfiltered, and undeniable, and as their conversation deepened, they began to recall memories they had never shared with anyone else, nights of laughter and tears, long walks under the stars, secret dreams whispered when they were younger, a world that had existed only for the two of them, and in doing so, they uncovered a vulnerability in each other that was both comforting and dangerous, because it reminded them of a bond that had been interrupted but never truly broken. And as Emma's hand brushed lightly against Liam's, a spark ran through her that was impossible to ignore, a thrill that made her pulse quicken and her stomach tighten with the awareness of how much she still cared, how much of her heart he still held. And Liam's reaction mirrored her own, subtle but loaded with meaning, his fingers lingering just a second longer, his eyes searching hers as if trying to read the depth of the feelings she was struggling to contain. And the more they lingered in that small, shadowed space, the more the temptation to let themselves feel fully, without restraint, grew, until the air between them seemed almost tangible, vibrating with emotion and unspoken desire. Yet neither spoke of David, though his presence loomed like an unspoken specter, a reminder of the commitments Emma had made, the promises she had spoken, and the life she had chosen. And that awareness only made the tension more intense, sharper, because every stolen glance, every fleeting touch, carried weight, consequence, and the silent understanding that these moments were fragile, precious, and potentially devastating. And as the conversation shifted to the present, Liam spoke of regrets, choices, and the ways life had shaped them, and Emma listened, captivated by the sincerity in his voice, the way he seemed to understand her in ways no one else could, the way he acknowledged the pain and joy of what had passed and the uncertainty of what might come. And in those moments, time seemed suspended, a bubble of emotion and intimacy that could not be broken. And yet, reality pressed against them in subtle ways. The distant sound of David laughing with friends, a server passing by with a tray of drinks, the faint echo of music from the hall. But instead of pulling them apart, it heightened the intensity, made the moments they shared feel more urgent, more significant, because every second they lingered carried the risk of exposure, the risk of consequences that could shatter their lives, and the knowledge of that danger only made them more aware of each other, more attuned to the way their bodies responded, the way their eyes met in silent communication, the way their voices softened in careful rhythm. And Emma felt a surge of emotions she hadn't expected, fear, excitement, longing, guilt, and a strange comfort in the recognition that Liam still saw her, truly saw her, in a way that no one else did, and that recognition made her heart ache with the complexity of it all, because it was wonderful and terrifying at the same time, and she knew that one moment could change everything, that a single choice in the next minutes could ripple across her life and the lives of those she loved. And as Liam leaned slightly closer, their shoulders brushing, the warmth radiating between them, she felt herself drawn in, caught in a tide of emotion she could not fight. And when he spoke her name again, softly, almost reverently, Emma felt a shiver run down her spine, a shiver that carried all the weight of years of suppressed feeling, of longing, and of love that had never fully disappeared. And as they shared small laughs over memories, quiet sighs over regrets, and whispered thoughts about what could have been, Emma felt the tension between them grow, a silent, electric force that neither could fully define but both felt keenly, and as the minutes stretched, they found themselves closer, their knees nearly touching, their hands occasionally brushing, and the air seemed thick with potential, thick with the sense that the world outside their small corner no longer mattered, that only this connection, this fragile, dangerous reconnection, existed, and Emma felt an internal battle raging, her rational mind screaming to step back, to honor her commitments, to preserve the life she had promised, and yet her heart, her body, her very being urging her forward, urging her to let herself feel fully, to acknowledge what she had buried for so long, to let herself remember the intensity of what she had once shared with Liam, and Liam seemed to be feeling the same, as if every subtle gesture, every careful word, carried the weight of unspoken longing, of missed chances, and of a connection neither could ever truly forget, and as their hands accidentally touched again, lingering just a heartbeat too long, Emma felt a rush of warmth and electricity, a reminder of how powerful and dangerous these feelings were, and she realized that this was more than nostalgia, it was a living, breathing emotion that had survived time and distance, that demanded attention, and that if ignored, would not simply fade away, and as Liam's gaze held hers, intense and searching, she understood that he felt it too, that he was aware of the line they were approaching, a line that, if crossed, could unravel everything, and that awareness made her heart pound, her thoughts race, and her emotions spin, because the pull between them was undeniable, irresistible, and yet laden with consequence, and as they continued talking, sharing small confessions and honest reflections about their lives, their losses, their growth, Emma felt a closeness she hadn't realized she had missed, a sense of being understood, seen, and valued in a way that made the rest of the world blur away, and with every subtle smile, every glance that held more than words, the intimacy grew, not in a physical sense but in an emotional one, deep, consuming, and fragile, and as the distant music from the hall shifted to a softer melody, Emma realized that she could spend hours here, lost in conversation, lost in memories, lost in the unspoken recognition that they had always mattered to each other, and yet, with that realization came a sudden awareness of the stakes, of David waiting across the room, of her responsibilities, of the life she had promised to build, and that knowledge made her heart ache, because desire and duty were in direct conflict. And she couldn't ignore either, and as Liam's voice softened, speaking words that made her catch her breath, she felt herself leaning just slightly closer, drawn by a force she could neither fight nor fully understand, and in that moment, she recognized the dangerous beauty of it all, the thrill of reconnection, the power of old love, the bittersweet ache of possibility, the weight of consequence, and the fragile bubble of intimacy that surrounded them, and as their laughter and conversation softened into a thoughtful silence, Emma realized that nothing would ever feel the same again, that a single private moment had the power to rewrite everything she thought she knew, to awaken emotions she had thought dormant, to test the boundaries of loyalty, love, and desire, and that the path ahead was uncertain, fraught with temptation, and filled with the quiet, electric anticipation of what might come next, and as they finally stood, subtly shifting apart yet still bound by invisible threads, Emma felt the first stirrings of fear and longing intertwining, a knot in her chest that refused to unravel, a tension that whispered that the night was far from over, that choices would have to be made, and that the delicate, private connection they had reignited could change the course of her life in ways she had never imagined, leaving her breathless, anxious, and strangely exhilarated all at once, caught in the exquisite, dangerous pull of a past she never fully left behind and a present she had not anticipated confronting so directly, and as they returned slowly toward the party, side by side yet worlds apart in their thoughts, Emma knew with a sinking, thrilling certainty that the private moment she had shared with Liam had awakened a storm within her, one that would not be easily calmed, and that the next choices, the next encounters, could define the rest of her life in ways she had only just begun to understand. Returning from the shadowed corner behind the venue, Emma felt the weight of every heartbeat, every glance, and every word shared with Liam pressing against her chest like a tide that refused to recede, and as she stepped back into the light of the engagement party, the laughter, music, and chatter that had once seemed distant now felt almost overwhelming, a stark contrast to the intimate world she had just left, and David, standing across the room with his friends, turned toward her with a warm, expectant smile, a smile that suddenly felt impossibly heavy with meaning, reminding her of the promises she had made, the life she had committed to, and the love she had chosen, and yet, even as she approached him, part of her mind kept replaying Liam's soft words, his intense gaze, the subtle touches that had made her heart race, the connection that had never truly faded, a connection that now whispered of possibilities she had not dared to imagine for years. And as David took her hand, his warmth, his steadiness, and his unspoken devotion felt both comforting and suffocating, because they reminded her of everything she had to protect while also highlighting everything she had risked in the past few minutes. And the weight of guilt pressed down harder when she saw Liam briefly glance toward them from across the room, his expression unreadable, a mixture of longing, regret, and something deeper that Emma couldn't place. And in that instant, she realized the private moment they had shared behind the venue was no longer private, that even without words, the energy between them had shifted everything, that a single choice she had made in a heartbeat now carried consequences that could ripple through her life in ways she could not yet comprehend. And as the night progressed, Emma tried to immerse herself in the celebrations, in conversations with friends and family, in the music and clinking glasses, but her mind was a whirlwind of emotion, a storm of longing, guilt, fear, and desire that refused to be silenced, and she found herself stealing glances at Liam, who now moved among the guests with a calmness that belied the intensity of what had just occurred, and every glance sent a jolt through her, a reminder that the connection they had rekindled in that corner was alive, persistent, and impossible to ignore. And even as David spoke, laughed, and pulled her close, offering his hand for a dance or leaning in to share a quiet joke, Emma felt a hollow ache in her chest, the echo of Liam's presence lingering like a shadow, a whisper of something that could have been, and she realized with a sinking certainty that the simplicity of the night she had imagined, the happiness, the celebration, the joy, was gone, replaced by complexity, uncertainty, and an unspoken tension that would not dissipate. And when Liam approached her later under the guise of casual conversation, his voice steady but his eyes intense, Emma felt her stomach tighten, a surge of emotion she could neither contain nor fully articulate, because every word he spoke, every small smile or gesture, carried the weight of history, of longing, and of possibility, and she knew that their interaction, however brief, would alter the course of the evening, of her relationship with David, and perhaps of her life itself. And as David, noticing the subtle shift, subtly glanced toward them, Emma's heart sank with the realization that the truth could not remain hidden forever, that the moment they had shared behind the venue was a line crossed, a secret that had already begun to reveal itself in small, undeniable ways. And when Liam's gaze met hers again, silent but charged, Emma felt an unbearable tension, the pull of the past against the responsibilities of the present, and she understood that every choice she made in the next minutes would carry immense weight, that the delicate balance she had maintained could collapse with a single word or glance. And as the party continued around them, the music and laughter now almost cruel in their normalcy, she felt the storm inside her grow, a mixture of regret, longing, fear, and a strange exhilaration at the intensity of what had just occurred. And when Liam quietly excused himself, leaving her momentarily alone with David, Emma felt the gravity of the situation pressing down on her, the realization that a single private moment had the power to undo months, perhaps years, of planning, commitment, and trust. And as David approached, his smile gentle but questioning, Emma's voice caught in her throat, the words she needed to explain tangled with the weight of emotion she was struggling to contain. And when she finally spoke, the confession came haltingly, carefully, yet every syllable carried the undeniable truth of her lapse, and she watched as David's expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to hurt, a slow burn of realization crossing his face as he processed what had happened, the party around them fading further as the world narrowed to the painful clarity of what she had done. And Emma felt a mixture of shame, regret, and sorrow wash over her, because she knew the consequences were irreversible, that the trust she had built, the promises she had made, and the life she had envisioned could no longer be taken for granted. And yet, even amidst the heartbreak, she felt a strange, lingering pull toward Liam, a stubborn reminder that some connections, once reignited, refused to fade quietly. And as David's voice trembled slightly with hurt, asking for clarity, Emma struggled to articulate her feelings, to reconcile the pull of the past with the commitments of the present, and she realized with a heavy heart that some lines, once crossed, could never be fully repaired, that the private moment she had shared behind the venue had not only altered her relationship but had awakened dormant emotions that demanded recognition, that insisted on being felt fully. And as Liam's presence lingered in her mind, a ghost of temptation and longing, she understood that the night would mark a turning point, a quiet fracture in the life she had known, and that the path forward would be filled with difficult choices, emotional reckoning, and the careful negotiation between desire, loyalty, and honesty. and as the evening drew on, Emma felt herself navigating the storm of David's questions, her own guilt, and the memory of Liam's intense, searching gaze, realizing that reconciliation, if possible, would require courage, patience, and vulnerability, and that the aftermath of a single, intimate moment could shape months, perhaps years, of emotional journey, teaching her about the fragility of trust, the enduring power of old love, and the bittersweet complexity of human emotion. And in the quiet moments when the music softened, when guests were distracted by laughter or conversation, Emma's thoughts returned inevitably to Liam, to the corner behind the venue, to the spark that had been reignited and the choices that had been forced upon her by that private encounter, and she felt the weight of the evening pressing down, a tangible reminder that every decision, every emotion, every glance carried significance far beyond the fleeting moment. And as the party wound down, with guests saying their goodbyes and the music fading into a soft echo, Emma stood in the quiet hall, David's presence beside her both comforting and painfully distant, her mind replaying the conversation, the touches, the laughter, and the silent moments with Liam, and she knew that life could no longer continue as it had before, that the delicate fabric of trust and commitment had been stretched, frayed, and challenged, and that navigating the consequences would require honesty, introspection, and perhaps even sacrifice. And as she watched Liam exit quietly, a fleeting shadow of longing and regret in his eyes, Emma felt the weight of what had been done, the irreversible nature of a private moment that had unfolded behind the venue, the emotional turbulence that now colored her engagement, and the profound realization that love, desire, loyalty, and regret are often intertwined in ways that make the human heart both resilient and fragile, capable of great devotion yet vulnerable to moments of temptation, and that the night's events would linger in memory, shaping decisions, relationships, and self-understanding for a long time. And as she finally turned toward David, taking his hand in hers, she understood that moving forward would require confronting the truth, accepting responsibility, and reconciling the past with the present, while carrying the lessons of longing, heartbreak, and the undeniable power of human connection into the chapters yet unwritten in her life, aware that the private moment shared with Liam behind the venue had ended more than a few hours of celebration. It had changed the course of her story forever, leaving her to navigate the delicate aftermath of love, desire, and the consequences of choices that could never be taken back. And in that quiet awareness, Emma felt both fear and resolve, a determination to face what had been unleashed, a recognition of the complexity of human emotion, and the bittersweet understanding that life, like love, is often unpredictable, messy, and profoundly transformative, and that the echoes of a single intimate moment can resonate far beyond the walls of a party, shaping hearts and lives in ways that are both painful and beautiful, irrevocable and unforgettable.